Hi. Hi, my name's Olav Andreas. I work as a tech writer and a course instructor at FotoWeb, and today's lesson will be all about FotoWeb. Specifically, we'll go through the steps that you see on the screen. We start with the installation and activation of FotoWeb, and then we discuss the options in the FotoWeb configuration wizard. There are some steps in that wizard that you should get right at the outset. And then we'll verify that our site is up and running so we can go on to create a FotoWeb archive. That way you'll get to see how FotoWeb connects to the Index Manager server that crawls the file repositories. Of course, an archive won't be much good without access, so we'll also create a user that can log into FotoWeb and assign some basic permissions to that user. So let's start with installation. I'm assuming you've already downloaded the FotoWeb installer from the customer portal. Just remember you need to be logged in as a local administrator on the Windows server where you're installing FotoWeb. During installation, FotoWeb will ask your permission to download and install SQL Server Express. It's perfectly alright to use an existing Microsoft SQL Server on your network. In that case, you simply choose no. But for the sake of this demonstration, I'll use the suggested Express version. Now the installation wizard proceeds to install FotoWeb. Make sure you read any prompts as you go along. There are some release notes that are worth reading along the way. And the installer will then start copying the necessary files. When the installation completes, you'll be asked to activate FotoWeb, and you will have received a product key in your email that you can simply paste in. After the installation completes, the FotoWeb configuration wizard starts up. This is a wizard that helps you set the basic properties of your FotoWeb site before you can start using it. First off, and this is important, you need to make a choice between using the embedded Apache web server or Internet Information Server for hosting the website. We generally recommend using the embedded web server, but if your site requires single sign-on, you will need to use IIS. If you choose IIS here and it's not already installed on the server, it will be installed in the background, so the installation process will probably take a few extra minutes. The next thing you need to do is provide a site name and a host name. The site name is only used to help you tell sites apart if there's more than one site on your FotoWeb server. The host name, on the other hand, needs to correspond to the DNS entry that you've assigned to the site so that it can be located over the internet. Then you choose the SQL server that FotoWeb should use. If you've opted to install the SQL Server Express, you just choose that option and click Next, and everything's taken care of automatically. If you choose to use a custom SQL server, you'll be asked for credentials to connect to that server before proceeding. FotoWeb also requires a connection to an SMTP server to be able to send emails. For example, when issuing reports, or when a user signs up or requests a new password. At this point, it is possible to proceed without specifying an email server, but you will receive a warning that some of the functionality in FotoWeb will be unavailable. So we strongly recommend setting up an SMTP server as soon as you can. When all the required information has been gathered, FotoWeb goes ahead and does its thing, creating the site. It will also create a local entry in the server's host file to allow you to immediately access the site even if no DNS entry exists yet. Just open up the web browser and point it to the host name you specified, and it should load the FotoWeb login screen. FotoWeb currently doesn't have any users or any archives for that matter, so we can't log in. Now we need to go into the Operations Center and set everything up. We'll start out pretty small and create an archive that everyone gets access to. And I'll walk you through some of the options that can be set on an archive. There's quite a few of them, so I'll just mention them briefly. It's all quite thoroughly documented on learnphotoware.com, so you can go there for all the details. We'll just start by accessing the Operations Center. If you're on the server console, you can simply enter localhost at port 7000 in the browser to open it. And then once it's loaded, we'll go to the FotoWeb configuration by clicking on the tab at the top. The page that opens here shows us all the sites that have been created on FotoWeb, and you can see there's currently just the one that we just made. Now, to configure the site, you go into the site configuration by clicking on this button to the right. Oh yeah, and since the site config opens in a separate window, it's practical to always allow pop-ups in the browser. So this then is the FotoWeb site configuration. As I said, there's really a lot of settings here, but we'll start with the basics and we'll create an archive. So we'll go to the Archives tab and click on the Add Archive button at the bottom of the screen. We'll need to name the archive, and there's the option to add a description to give users an idea of what's in it. What we'll focus on now is the index area below, where you have to connect to an index manager server and choose which of the indexes on that server you want to connect to. A quick tip in that regard, in my setup, Index Manager and FotoWeb run on the same server, so I can simply type in the server name or localhost to list the indexes on my server. But in larger installations, it may well be that you run Index Manager and FotoWeb on separate servers. In that case, you need to enter the name of the Index Manager server here. And you also need to make sure that FotoWeb and Index Manager can communicate on port 7000. You may also want to open port 7001 if you want an encrypted connection. You can see that Index Manager responds by asking for authentication. This is the default mode of operation, and there's a global setting in the Operations Center that controls whether users should be authenticated against the local server or the domain. It's also possible to disable authentication on indexes altogether so that any client in the network, be it FotoWeb or PhotoStation, can connect without authenticating at all. Next, we'll set an access list on the archive, so we head over to the Access List tab. For now, I'd like to give everyone access so you can see what it looks like when you're accessing a public photo website. So I'll make sure the Everyone group, that is, all authenticated users, have access to browse the archive. Let's see how that looks. I'll open up a new tab and I'll go to the FotoWeb homepage. Remember last time we were presented with a login screen, but since there is at least one public archive on the site, the homepage will look a little different, and the content in the stock photo archive can be accessed without logging in.